What do you make of an expanded BRICS? What does that mean?
Well, you know, the word BRICS was coined by Western experts, but it was coined as kind of economic group, or group of countries of growing economies. But in reality, it was not about economic cooperation. It was more about representing the global South and its interests within the existing Western-dominated, at that time, completely Western-dominated global governance agenda. But there is also BRICS, this group that promotes its own agenda and its own views about the world, which is basically more plural, kind of what we call in Russia multipolar world.
As members of the BRICS stated very well, this is not an anti-Western alliance, but rather one provides more options to global governance. Do you think it is a polite statement, or actually it is really the essence of this group trying to do something different?
It's not an anti-Western group. It's nothing like the Soviet Union, because the BRICS is different, because they believe all these countries, first of all, are different. The members of the BRICS, you know, sometimes they have different relations with the United States. You know, Russia had, at the moment, very bad relations, but it used to have better relations, and it used to be even a member of G8. But at the same time, their vision of the future world is very similar. It's, I would say, in China, they say that the future world should be based on Confucian principle of He Er Bu Tong. Yes, He Er Bu Tong is meaning that harmony, maintaining harmony, but at the same time preserving differences or tolerating differences, something like that. So this is a vision which India has, and Brazil has, and Russia has, and everybody has there. So they don't want to destroy the Western world. There's no such silly idea anymore. But they would cooperate and tolerate the West as one of the centers of power, but they also want to be recognized as as other different centers of power.
But now we see so much description about the group, BRICS, as so-called anti-Western group, for example, in the description of some media coverage. And as you know, some of the phrases being used one time to a million times. Sometimes people would believe in it because it's been repeated too much, and that's called propaganda. I'm sure you understand that skills. So, Professor, what do you make of these intentional descriptions of suggesting the nature of the group, but exactly different or exactly against what the group has claimed that their purpose is?
If you look at this reasonably, that it's just that the world comes to its normal situation, because historically the world most of the time from the ancient Roman period, it has always been multipolar. So there were very short moments when it was dominated by one power or two powers, but it used to be always multipolar. So it's kind of coming to its normal position, and it depends on the point of view. If you accept this reality that the world will be multipolar and there will be many different countries, and they will be politically, economically different. From that point of view, they are not anti-Western. So they don't want to destroy the West. They just want to be left alone by it.
Professor Lukin is a leading scholar on China, Russia-China relations and diplomacy. I spoke with him on the sidelines of the ongoing BRICS summit in Kazan. Professor Lukin shares a passion for strategic studies with his father, a former deputy speaker of the Russian State Duma. Together, they recently co-authored an article on the future of diplomacy amid evolving challenges. In my recent interview with him, I asked him about that in the context of BRICS and China. What do you make of the roles that China and Russia within the current expanded group of BRICS?
About 40 years, China did not use its armed force abroad for any reason except, international exercises and probably some peacekeeping operations. You can hardly find any other big country in the world that refrained from any military activities abroad over this period of time. So I tell my Western colleagues that China, whatever you say, the fact is that China is a very peaceful country for such a big country. So the reality that is that Chinese international role is, of course, let's say, very peaceful. It's probably the most peaceful country in the world, and it's beginning to play a positive role also in solving international crisis. At least its proposals are very interesting, and in some cases it was also, well, not many cases yet, but in some cases it was also fruitful. For example, in the case of Saudi Arabia and Iran, we all remember that China managed to talk them into some kind of cooperation, those two countries, which is very important. And I think China is going to continue these efforts.
Professor, you see that the Chinese leader has been proposing different initiatives: global development initiative, global security initiative, global civilization initiative. Meanwhile, earlier there's also Belt and Road initiative. This is a China that is taking steps to be more constructive, even theoretically, in the global governance. How much do you see those messages get across to members of the BRICS, especially the expanded BRICS? How much will that be of reference to the BRICS members in dealing with some of the hotspot issues, as well as looking for unity, meanwhile looking at potential of cooperation and development?
You don't have to have a total unity in the BRICS, because BRICS countries are very different, and their very idea is to, as I said, he or Buthung. They're still Buthung, or different in many ways, but they managed to cooperate in one very important area, in the area of creating a more plural, or some people say more democratic international reality. And from that point of view, they can work together, and they do that. And this is also one of the reasons, I think, that why so many countries want to join the BRICS, because I think that at the beginning, these were only very big countries, I would say, representing their continents or their regions, like the biggest country in the region: Russia, China, India, Brazil. South Africa is like the largest economy in Africa. But now I would say like mid-level countries from the South, they understood that that BRICS is a very influential organization which formulates the Southern agenda, I would say, for the world, and they also want to take part. They want to participate, not only to be represented by larger countries, but to join the BRICS, to be part of this process of elaborating these decisions. So that's why they want to join, and it's very important. And of course, nobody is against it, because, as I said, BRICS stands for plurality. So they would accept, I would say, most of those countries. It would be better for decision making. Of course, it could bring some difficulties, like in Shanghai Cooperation Organization, for example, or let's say, in the EU, European Union, because if you have too many countries, you have a lot of procedures, beginning from language questions.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the EU, you have like more than 20 countries, and you need more than 20 simultaneous interpreters for every presentation. But still, I think the pluses of enlargement are more than minuses, and I think that is going to be further. The BRICS is going to be further, is going to enlarge further, and more countries will join from various continents.
Professor Lukin, you have been doing research about China for decades. You are following your father's footsteps, who used to serve as a leader of the Russian Duma decades ago. And recently, you have also been collectively writing articles and strategic papers with your father regarding Russia and China. So how do you see the different generations of studies of sinology or China studies here in Russia, and also getting ever popular in other BRICS member countries? What do you think are the real essence and the priorities for all those who want to do research work in the field to focus on right now?
My father was one of the first people in the Soviet Union, influential people, who wrote policy papers saying that China is going to develop, especially after Deng Xiaoping came to power. But in general, I would the young generation, what I can see, they are more practical about China. They know less about all this kind of wushu and traditional things about China, but they know quite well that you can earn money there, you can get a good job or work in a Chinese company in Moscow or in some Russian city, or go to China and work in a Chinese company there, or in an international company in China.
Right.
So so they are more practical about making money and having a career with the Chinese language and some kind connected to China.
You and your dad cooperated in a recent policy paper about Russia's future. What exactly do you see Russia's future is, and how is that related to, members of BRICS mechanisms such as this?
We decided to cooperate to make it our message more kind of more influential or better heard, let's say. And the idea was very simple, that we think that Russia, when it overcomes its difficulties and when there is peace finally, because all military events, I would say, are ended sooner or later by peace, some kind of peaceful settlement. So Russia would have to restore its position as a country between the East and the West, or between Asia and Europe, and that the fact that Russia needs to cooperate only with some countries at the moment is imposed on it by the West. But the situation will have to change, and that we'll have to restore some constructive relations with Europe, especially Europe, perhaps not the United States, but Europe, which is our neighbor, more or less. While keeping our improved relations or close relations with Asian countries such as China, for example, because we, as people who stood for improving and developing relations with China, my father did it from 1970s, now we say that it doesn't mean that we should turn our back on everybody else. And we give an example of China, that China has a policy of cooperating with all countries in the world, regardless to its political system or economic system. So we think that from that point of view, we should study China. And in the BRICS, there is basically the same opinion. So it's not only China, but we can see it from, say, peace proposals by China and Brazil, that Brazil also shares these ideas. And India more or less shares these ideas, the idea of plurality or cultural pluralism and international pluralism, I would say. So we think that Russia will have to come to this traditional, and now the most, I would say, the only possible stance, multi-vector, we call it sometimes multi-vector diplomacy, so that the current situation is not very natural. But there are many opinions in Russia, of course. So we have this internal discussion about the future of Russia's foreign policy.